it feels like my teenage years weren't mine, if that makes sense, right? Like it feels like it was like it just feels like it was stolen from me. Guided, my memory was trash. I would come home at the end of the day and wonder what I did all day. The help didn't come from medical professionals. They just never talked about it, or they didn't know what it was. Like my general practitioner had no idea. He just went, here's medication. And then you're taking the Prozac and your body's adjusting to that. And that's creating more feelings of depersonalization. And I don't know why, but it's not really discussed. It's not really researched. It's not really looked into. And it's a massive problem.
Hey everyone, I'm Sean O'Connor, author of the Depersonalization Manual, and today I'm speaking with Travis Trudeau, 29 years old, from British Columbia, Canada. Travis's experience with depersonalization derealization disorder has its roots in a very difficult early life. He grew up with emotional and physical abuse, experienced significant loss, and went through severe bullying from grades 3 to 6. By the age of just 8, he was already dealing with his first panic attack and episodes of health anxiety. His symptoms over the years included full body numbness, visual snow, and a deep sense of environmental unreality. Travis lived with DPDR for an incredible 13 years in total, but despite the long struggle, he never gave up, and after finding the DP manual, he was finally able to break free from chronic depersonalization and derealization. He recently wrote to me and said, quote, "I had a very traumatic childhood, one filled with emotional and physical abuse. I also experienced a lot of loss. But I'm doing so much better now, and your book has broken me free from chronic DPDR," end quote. And today, Travis is here with us to share his powerful story, from his long battle with DPDR to the tools that finally helped him recover and what life feels like now that he's on the other side. Travis, you're very welcome to the channel. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
It's a pleasure to have you on, man. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Travis. I'm 29 years old. I'm from British Columbia, Canada. And yeah, I think I grew up with a pretty chaotic childhood, honestly. Between some of the emotional stuff that I went through and some of the physical stuff I went through, um, there was a period of time when I was very young, between the ages of grade 3 and grade 6, like you said, where I was constantly watching my back at school, right? Being attacked on the way home, being attacked while in the classroom, some pretty severe bullying. And it was definitely a really difficult time. As I got older, I definitely had some of that as well. Some of the bullying in high school and stuff like that too. Um, and I think, like you said, my first panic attack or first anxiety attack was when I was about 8 years old. And it definitely set off a bit of a, a chain reaction with the DPDR and stuff like that. Having to constantly watch your back at school, um, and your fight or flight constantly being kicked in, definitely played a big part in developing that DPTR. And the depersonalization, I think the earliest experience for me was, I think I was about 9 or 10, and we were at a Pizza Hut, and I was eating, and all of a sudden, my whole body just went like numb from head to toe. It was completely numb. I couldn't feel swallowing. I couldn't feel the earth beneath my feet. I couldn't feel breathing. It was a very, very weird experience. And then it obviously made the anxiety worse. And then it also triggered that kind of that loop where you have the DP, you're terrified of the symptoms, so it causes more symptoms. So yeah, there's a lot more else for me to say there regarding my history. I think that's the most important thing, is that's kind of where it started.
Having a panic attack at 8 years old, Travis, I mean, you know, I had the first one I had was I was 25 and I had no reference point for it. I mean, I at least kind of had some idea of what anxiety was, I guess, and
Yeah.
that gave me some start to move forward with. What's it like having a panic attack at 8? Like, were you able to kind of like describe it to people, or how did you work with it at all?
I ran to my parents and because I was having chest pain, which is a pretty common, anxiety panic symptom, right? And I was saying to myself, like, or saying to my parents, I think I'm having a heart attack because my heart was just like pounding and 8 years old and understanding, I guess, what a heart attack is. I don't know. It was very, very odd. But I was ran up to my parents, screaming, crying, not knowing what was going on. My dad put me on, like, pretty much just grabbed me and held me, because I was just inconsolable. So yeah, I didn't really know what was happening, right? I think it just peaked and then ended. And then yeah, it was a pretty scary experience.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And did you did you speak to any doctors or therapists about that afterwards?
Not at that point. No, no.
Mm.
I didn't speak to a therapist or doctor until I was probably about 12 or 13.
And then from the ages of 8 to 12 or 13, were you experiencing persistent anxiety at that time, or did things kind of calm down for you after the panic attack?
Mm. No, it was definitely persistent. Whether it was fears of like the dark or fears of monsters or panic attacks or health anxiety, yeah, it was pretty persistent.
Okay. How were you able to manage school or just kind of going about your day-to-day life? Did you
Um,
were there things you avoided, or did you just try and push through it?
just tried to push through it. That's kind of always been my thing, is just
Mm.
push through it. You'll get through to the other side. And eventually the symptoms will go down. But yeah, just push through it. And I think school was a bit of a break for me from stuff that was going on at home and stuff like that. So, and some of that chaos. So I think school was actually a bit of a break for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
And of course, I'm conscious of like, sharing as much as you're comfortable to do, Travis.
Hmm.
But to what degree do you think the situation at home plus the bullying kind of contributed? Did you think it was kind of a cumulative thing that kind of built up, and then at some point the panic just
Yeah.
kicked in?
I think part of it's genetic, honestly. My mother is a very neuroticism runs on one side of my family. And then the other part of it was definitely environmental, right? It was kind of half and half, I think. And I think the genetic piece of it mixed with the environment piece just sparked the panic attacks and the anxiety, right?
Mhm. Okay. Okay. Um,
Hmm.
can you tell us a bit more about the symptoms that you were experiencing in that time, Travis? Were the symptoms consistent, or did they change over time? How was that for you?
Yeah, the symptoms definitely changed over time. When I was younger, the depersonalization was very much more physical. So my arms didn't feel like my arms, my body didn't feel like my body. Swallowing felt really weird and alien to me. Just those sorts of things. As I got older, the symptoms changed more to my environment, I think. So the environment seemed uh fake, or the people around me seemed fake, or certain objects didn't make sense to me. Like, it's really hard to explain when you have DP, like you said, right? Where, like, you're looking at a toaster in your kitchen going, how did that get made? And then your brain just goes down this hole of like how does a toaster exist? Like, what? And it doesn't make sense to someone who doesn't have it. But like, even random little objects can blow up your anxiety and cause DP symptoms. And yeah, so when I was younger, it was definitely a lot more physical. As I got older, it became more outside of me, if that makes sense. I still have the occasional physical, when I'm driving, sometimes my hands on the steering wheel feel a little bit weird and I go, "Oh, no, that's just DP. Move on," but yeah, it's definitely gotten a lot more external now.
And essentially what you're describing, Travis, is, the you're describing depersonalization as a category initially, and
Right.
then, being focused on yourself, your arms not feeling like they're yours, and then over time, like it feels like your environment. So that's more derealization in technical
Totally.
terms. Something that people, I get asked a lot is people say, well, but can I have more derealization than depersonalization? So is this different? And the answer is no,
Mm.
it's not.
Yeah.
I like to think of DP and DR as like, if you had a flu and you have coughing and sneezing, they're essentially
Right.
two symptoms of the same thing. They're two sides of the same coin. We tend to kind of overcomplicate them by putting them into these very kind of distinct categories. Also something that I certainly experienced, and I think that most people do, is you're experiencing somewhere between DP and DR. You know,
Yeah.
it's uncommon for people just to experience one of them. You're typically experiencing
Right.
somewhere in between the two. But again, we do tend to overcomplicate it by trying to kind of imposing categories on it. And the thing you said as well, Travis, of like, having times when you're recovered where you just like very briefly notice, that hand feel weird. I know what that is. And you get back to driving
Yeah.
your car or whatever.
Exactly.
And the thing is
Yeah.
that like these feelings, to have these feelings briefly is like the most normal thing in the world. Like,
Mhm.
most people will experience this at some point or another. Especially if you haven't been sleeping right, if you're stressed out, if you're
Yeah.
jet lagged or whatever, you'll have moments of this. It's the most normal thing. But the difference is that the first time it happens, especially in the context of a panic attack, then we look at it and we go, "Oh my God, I must be going crazy. Oh my God,
Yep.
I'm lost control over my body," or whatever. It's the interpretation of it that triggers the panicked refocusing and causes the feedback loop to keep
And the
going.
loop.
And the loop, right?
The loop. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Yeah.
The loop that you feel just does not stop, and it's out of your control, and yeah, and it's quite an experience, quite an enlightenment to understand that, like, not only is this within your control, it's completely within your control. But it just utterly does
Yeah.
not feel like that when it happens at
No.
first.
No. No. And the like you said, the interpretation. It's like when I had it when I was younger, it was a lot more transient because I didn't add a lot of meaning to it.
Right.
Right? It would just kind of come and go as it went. And I was like, oh, that's weird. But I was kind of like enjoying it or riding it out when I was younger. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I just didn't add those interpretations or that judgment to it. And then as I got older here, and I guess I've developed a little bit more cognitively, my brain went, oh, are you getting psychosis? That was the first thing my brain told me. And then I was like, oh no. And then and you know what? I have obsessive compulsive disorder. And I think honestly, there's a lot of relationship. There's relationship between DP and OCD. There's something going on there. Because the DP side of things is very obsessional as well.
Yeah.
Right. And then I was doing compulsions to try to relieve the depersonalization as well. Right. So I was like pinching myself all the time, which is a very common compulsion. Right. Someone once told me that if you can hold your breath, then you're not really in a dream. So I was holding my breath all the time to check if I was in a dream or if I was awake, getting reassurance from doctors that I wasn't going into psychosis. Right. So the obsessional side and the compulsive side is very much there, I think, with some people, maybe with depersonalization, but it really was related for me.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. So obsessive compulsive disorder is, it's also an anxiety based condition, just like
Yeah.
DPDR is, and the engine that fundamentally drives both of them is that obsessive checking. Because
Yeah.
with DPDR, it's it is the constant checking to see, is the feeling still there.
Yeah.
To what degree is it still there?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try this thing. Has that worked? Has that switched it off? Is this better in the mornings or in the evenings? What about this symptom? What about this combination of symptoms? I better go online and research
Totally.
and check to see if somebody has had that. So it absolutely turns into is an obsessive engine that drives
Mm-hmm.
us. And what is really strange initially to learn about is that that isn't helping it at all, because what it feels like is that, well, if I obsess about this problem enough, I will get to a point where I just figure it out. I will I
Yeah.
will I will beat this into submission intellectually,
Yeah.
and an answer will present itself. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's and it feels so counterintuitive
Yeah.
to learn that what we do to recover is we stop doing that completely. And when I first learned that, I thought I was like, but that's surrendering to it. That's
Yeah.
giving up, isn't it? I have to throw the kitchen sink at this to stop
Yeah.
it. Um, and it's not. It's
Yeah.
the with the best of intentions. It's that determination to get to the bottom of this that actually
Yeah.
keeps it going, because what you learn, looking back on it, is that you actually did understand this, and this is actually completely harmless. Yeah, the thing of like, I had this thing as well of, you know worrying that I was stuck in a dream and I couldn't wake up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would start like turning lights on and off to see, because
Yes.
apparently you can't do that in
Yeah.
dreams, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Pinching myself, reading as well.
Yeah.
Apparently you can't read and dream. So I would, and all these little tests to, and my idea was that, like, I'm going to build up this, like, a case, like a portfolio, so that I can
Totally.
show to the anxiety that, like, okay, here's why I'm not dreaming, and that will win. And it was a waste of time, because
Yeah.
all you're doing is communication to your brain that the anxiety is so important that it deserves you building a case against it.
Yeah. 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 And it's you're showing your brain that it really is a threat,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Like before, and now that I'm kind of out of it, like I still get little glimmers of it or whatever, right? Like it still tries to rear its head, right? And I just look at it and I call it out for what it is,
Mm.
right? And I just say like, look, man, you're just depersonalization. Um, and that's it. I leave it at that, right? Because as soon as I start questioning it, or as soon as I get any more into it, that's when I think that loop will happen, right?
Yeah.
And one thing that actually helped a lot with your book was, I think towards the I think middle to the end of it, when you were talking about the different substances and stuff like that that can make it worse. I've cut my caffeine back, probably 80%. I still drink a little bit of coffee, right? And my nicotine, I used to be on a higher dosage for the nicotine. I've reduced that down to the minimum dosage now. So the caffeine and the nicotine has been reduced by 80-90% now. And that did actually help quite a bit, right? It kind of helped with the more acute symptoms of depersonalization, where like if I drank way too much coffee in a day, 100% felt like I was in a dream, right? Or if I was just smoking nicotine all day without a break, 100% it would kind of induce that same feeling, that would get me caught back in that loop, right? So, um, you know, there's a lot to take out of the book for sure. For me, the most helpful things were the caffeine intake, the nicotine intake, as well as kind of um the psychoeducation that you provided on depersonalization, right? You really showed me that it's not a threat, right? And as soon as I read all of that, and my something just clicked in my brain and went, this isn't a threat. Move on. Like I don't I don't know how else to explain it. If you're following the book, if you're um taking it seriously, eventually it will click, right? It took me about, I think, 3 or 4 months of reading the book, really going through it, going over it a few times before it clicked, but it eventually did.
That's so good to hear.
Mhm.
Really interesting as well, Travis, the thing you mentioned about, when you were younger and experienced it, that you didn't add any meaning to it, you didn't add any judgments to it. And this is such a common thing people describe, is that when they have it when they're younger, and it's the exact same feelings, but because we haven't developed that same sense of kind of introspection that we do as
Mhm.
adults, that like it might be quite terrifying, but then your friends are playing football over there, so you just go and do that instead, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that girl is watching. Oh, it becomes like very um outward focused.
Right.
We tend not to get into an introspective thing as quickly, and then when we get older and we develop a bit of more introspection, maybe a bit of health anxiety, then
Right.
the exact same situation can present itself, but now it's in the context of, oh my god, what is this feeling, why is this happening now? um
Yeah.
and then going and researching it, and et cetera, et cetera, and
Yeah.
starts to kind of bit.
Doctor Google.
Oh
Doctor
my god.
Google is the
Doc-
worst, man. And that's actually one thing that the DP and my obsessive compulsive disorder shared, is that research compulsion. Like, oh my God. And you know what? Like, you talk in your videos about when you had depersonalization, there wasn't as much out there, right? Like you were kind of just trying to figure it out on your own, right? But it's kind of like, to me, it's kind of a double-edged sword, where now there's so many people that talk about it. You get so much bad information from people, and you're on Reddit and you're looking at these stories where somebody's had it for 30 years and nothing's helped, and you're just spiraling. I mean, I had it for a long time, right? I had it for over a decade, I think, right? Because between the ages of kind of 13 to 23, it felt pretty constant. And then outside of that, it was transient, coming and going for months at a time. I'd be okay for a month, it would come back for 3 months. So when you look at those stories of people that have never recovered, and it's this catastrophe for you, right? So for people that are currently dealing with it right now, you will get out of it. Like, and when you're in it, it seems absolutely terrifying and like it's never going to end. But that is yet another catastrophe right there, right? Like, you're catastrophizing, and you just need to follow the steps in the book, and eventually you will really get better. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I remember seeing those stories as well of people who had it for decades, and it's absolutely scared the life out of me.
Right.
Um, but it's so interesting because you'll also see stories of people who've had it for like a month and they've recovered. You see people who've
Yeah.
had it for 2 weeks and they've recovered, and you see people who've had it for 6 months, 10 years, whatever. And what that feels like when you encounter it initially is that, well, uh, there's different types of DPDR, and they last for different amounts of time. And fingers crossed, I don't have the type that lasts forever, right?
Yeah.
But of course, that doesn't make a scratch of sense. And what's actually happening is that, like, all that demonstrates to you is people develop anxiety-based conditions. They're the most common thing in the world, and it takes people different amounts of time to find the correct information to recover.
Yeah.
That's all. That's all. And the thing is, as well, is that, like, you see, so take someone who has it for let's say 5 years. But if you talk to that person after they've had it for 4 years, and they say, "I've had this forever,"
Mm.
and that's what it feels like. I mean, the 2 years that I had it, it felt like, oh, I've had this for forever. It feels like that.
Yeah.
But that type of language becomes very prominent, and that's what you see when you look at the comments on the forums and on Reddit and such. And then we get this idea into our heads that, oh, there's a version of this that lasts forever. There's people
Yeah.
who have this who cannot get out of it because they're on Reddit. And also the other thing is that the people who have recovered, they're not on Reddit anymore, and they're they're
No.
they're not on, they're not on the forums because they've understood, either through trial and error or through getting the information, that
Yeah.
in order to recover, you have to stop discussing this. And I mean that in a loving way, because I was that guy for 2 years. I was that guy. I was on the there was only one forum back in the day, but I just occupied it all day, every
Yeah.
day, comparing,
Yeah.
contrasting symptoms. I made
Yeah.
friendships. There was people who I'd met in real life afterwards,
Hmm.
you know, and to pull back from that and the sense of community that was in it felt very, very strange, but you have
Yeah.
to do it. You have to do it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think my most recent DP episode started back in 2022. Um, so it was about 3 years of constant DP this last time. And I was working out of town at a camp, and I remember, like, this is the weirdest thing about DP is that logically it really doesn't make any sense, right? Like you got to take the logic out of it, because when you start throwing logic at it, it didn't help. like like no logic helped. So I did security there, and I was sitting at my post, and for some reason my brain could not comprehend that there was a kitchen on both sides of the hallway. And like I can't even explain it, right? And it became a terrifying idea to me that there was a kitchen on both sides. And at the same time, it was, I had that curtain, I like to call it, happened to me, where the curtain came over me and the DP happened all at the same time. And it had nothing to do with the kitchens. It was, I had this, I guess, an anxiety episode or something right at that time, or panic right at that time. My brain like misfired, and the DP started right then. So, the thoughts are very illogical, right? You're gonna have thoughts that terrify you, and you're gonna have thoughts, like, for me, I was freaking out about every thought I had, right? I was constantly hyper vigilant of every thought I had, right? Whether it was about irreality or unreality, whether it was about, is my family actually my family? Um, whether about, like, did I actually just do that action or did I not? So kind of like this, right? Are my memories even my memories anymore? Right. But the thought of not being able to comprehend that there was a kitchen on each side makes no sense. Right. It sounds, I hate to use the term, right? But crazy, right? Like, that's what you think to yourself. Like, who cares that there's a kitchen on both sides? But my brain made that an issue with the DP. I can't even explain it. So anyways, the whole idea is that, right? Like, I had such insane thoughts all the time and such scary thoughts all the time. Um, but you really, really have to just mark it as DP, right? Like, that's just depersonalization, and try to do something with like, try to move on and do something with your life after, right? Because that's the only thing that helped me, was marking it as it is and just moving forward.
100%. Um, and you're so right when you say that, like, logic doesn't help. It doesn't. And this is something I talk about in the book, but like, one of the big mistakes that we make is that we bring logic and reason to the table to try and argue with these thoughts and feelings. But it's a waste of time, because anxiety is not based on logic and reason. So
Yep.
you're wasting your time. It's like, the example I give is like, take another symptom of anxiety, like heart palpitations or muscle tension. And if you're experiencing heart palpitations and muscle tension, you wouldn't like explain to your shoulder why it doesn't need to be tense. You wouldn't like get into an argument with your heart about why it shouldn't be beating
Yeah.
that fast,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also,
Yeah.
what would happen if you did that? Every time you focus on your heart, and your
Mhm.
shoulder would tense up and your heart would beat more quickly,
Yep.
even with the best of intentions. Um,
Totally.
what do we do instead? Let your shoulder be tense, let your heart rate race. You're not. It's okay. It may not be comfortable, but it's okay. You focus
Yeah.
your attention away from that, and then later on, you notice that your muscles have relaxed and your heart's back to normal.
Yeah.
It'll happen in the background. It's not your job to focus on these things and stop them in the moment.
Right. Right.
Bring reason and logic to the table. It's not going to work. And that is,
No.
and I think as well, if you have an analytical mindset and you have a kind of a problem solving mindset, that becomes very frustrating because you're like, but I have to be able to stop this now. And it feels very strange
Oh,
to respond to what feels like an emergency by focusing your attention away from it. But
right.
that's what we do. The thing as well, you mentioned, Travis, about, the thought of like, the space in the kitchen, or is my family, or things like that.
Yeah.
The family thing is really interesting because I remember like being with my parents after this happened to me back when I was 25, and sitting with them and just feeling like I don't know who these people are. Like I know they're my parents, but I can't feel it. I can't
Yeah.
feel the connection to them. And I would consciously struggle to kind of like make that connection again. And also checking to see, is the connection back? Is it back? Do I feel like
Yeah.
I'm connected now? Right. And then they're talking to me about like the weather, and I'm just kind of going, oh yeah, yeah, okay. But I don't feel like you're
Yeah.
my parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that I thought that recovery would be like, there would almost be like a tangible reconnecting of like a fiber optic cable,
Right.
like
Like
somebody that would actually like go, oh yeah, there, it's my mom and dad.
instantaneous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But then it would be
Instantaneous.
this kind of like,
Yeah.
like in the
Like a
Wizard of
loading
Oz,
screen.
and everything goes back into Technicolor. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
A loading
And
screen. Yeah. Yeah.
a loading screen, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
and then,
Yeah.
but in reality, what it was this: I recovered,
Mm.
as everyone can, and it happened in the background while I was doing other things, but I recovered. And then I remember sitting with my parents after I'd recovered, and like, I actually thought to myself, like, it's not like you're sitting there with your parents thinking to yourself, God, I'm so connected to you. Yeah, you're 100%
Yeah.
my mother and father.
Yeah.
Like, oh
Yeah.
my God,
Yeah. Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
You're not. You're in the normal flow state of being in a
Mm.
conversation about the dog that's barking outside, or how bad
Yep.
the Irish football team. It's just,
Yep.
you're just getting into the normal flow, and you're having fun and making jokes, and you're cooking food, and whatever. And the whole thing about the connection thing
Yeah.
was something that I had been creating by constantly interrupting the normal flow state by checking
Yeah.
to see, was the flow state working.
Totally. Yeah.
I had made that problem myself. And yeah, and then we search for an external way to address it, when the actual reason it's happening is our own um constant interrupting of our own flow state. Uh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And a part of the recovery too was really identifying when I was trapped in it, right? Like I know I'm having DP when I'm questioning why an inanimate object is an inanimate object, or like why, like, how come I can't feel the earth spinning, or how come I'm not just lifting off the ground and levitating like gravity, like just questioning all these things about physics and questioning all these things about reality. And like you said, you kind of just got to let it, like for me, I just had to let the depersonalization be in the background,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm going to go live my life. um and it can either be there or it cannot. Like I think you used the word surrender earlier, and that's honestly a fantastic word. It was a very positive word for me. Is I ultimately, using your steps and your advice, I ultimately surrendered to it, really, right? Like it was like, let's just let it be there. What's the worst that happens? I've had this for 13 years. Like, let's just see what happens if I surrender to it. And I just let it be there, and eventually it resolves itself, right? And it does try to come back here and there, but I just say to myself, let it be there, let's move on. And within an hour, I'm back in that flow state, living my life, right? And things feel normal again. um yeah. Yeah.
The way to disempower anxiety, and therefore DPDR, is not by trying to defeat it or
Mm.
turn it off in the moment. It's by training yourself to be indifferent to it. If
Right.
it's there, if
Totally.
it's there, it's there. If it's not there, it's not there. But I've got stuff to do.
Yeah.
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 And what I'm not doing anymore is like taking a day off work to sit
Yeah.
in front of a computer and 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 send myself into panic attack after panic attack by
Yeah.
reading comments on Reddit. I'm not doing it anymore. And it
Yeah.
took me a long time to get there, to get to a point where I was just like I went from being petrified of these thoughts to actually being sick of listening to myself think them.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah. 100%.
I got better things to do
Yeah.
than have another thought about like, oh, what if I think what if I consider my own existence so intensely that I somehow break reality and snap out of existence,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Thanos would do,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Literally
Yeah.
having that thought, I'm going to wink out of existence. You know, why don't I read a book and why don't I go and watch a movie instead? Like, I've other things to do. But it takes a while to get there. So you went through such a long period with this, Travis, and I know it would be it's a huge question, but like, can you just talk us through just even some of the aspects of that experience, like going through basically all of your teenage years
Mm.
with this? Um, what was it like, and what did you find treatment for it? When did you find the term depersonalization? Yeah,
Yeah.
can you
Yeah.
just tell us a bit more about it?
Sure. So it's a little bit emotional because I think that it feels like my teenage years weren't mine, if that makes sense, right? Like it feels like it was I don't like it just feels like it was stolen from me, right? And my experiences when I was younger and my genetics led me to have this, and it feels like a decade was stolen from me, right? Like I don't my memory, and people probably experience this like I did, my memory is was trash. It was totally wiped away from me. I would come home at the end of the day and wonder what I did all day, right? Like I had a really hard time with memory recall. And I don't think my like now that I'm recovered and and I feel better, I understand that the recall is still there. I was still having those memories. I was still forming those memories, but I couldn't conjure them at the time, right? So now I kind of remember a little bit more of my teenage years, but it really feels like it was stolen from me. And that is really sad. When I was about 13, I went to see I guess like a counselor or a therapist. I don't know what they were, but they were teaching me basic cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, right? So, identifying the anxiety, giving a name to it, maybe some breathing techniques, just basic cognitive behavioral therapy and anxiety stuff. Um, but my general practitioner, the counselor or therapist, couldn't explain to me what that feeling was that I was having. I was always complaining about feeling weird when I was a kid, right? And when I was a teenager, constantly complaining about feeling weird. And it was the depersonalization, right? I was in a constant like disconnect from my environment and from myself. So unfortunately, the help didn't come from medical professionals. As much as I thank them for trying, and it wasn't their fault. Unfortunately, they just never talked about it, or they didn't know what it was. Like my general practitioner had no idea. He just went, "Here's medication," right? He said, "It's just anxiety. Take some Prozac," and and then you're taking the Prozac and your body's adjusting to that, and that's creating more feelings of depersonalization, and you're getting further down that, and then you come off the medication and that causes more feelings. So but ultimately I found the term depersonalization from researching online, right, and watching YouTube videos. So I've been watching your channel for quite some time now, I think since the 2022 episode when I was out in camp, and my brain just like felt like it shut down, and couldn't comprehend the space around me with the kitchens. Um, During that episode, I found your channel, and I've been watching your channel for the last 3, 4 years almost now. There was a few other YouTubers as well that I was watching, but I ultimately found the term depersonalization from you, and not from a medical professional. And even when I talk to the mental health, because I have a mental health team now as well for my obsessive compulsive disorder, I have a ton of support for everything else. But even when I talk to them about depersonalization, nobody seems to have an answer. They just always say, "Oh, it's anxiety. It's just a symptom of anxiety." That's what they always say, right? And that was super frustrating because it's like, I know I'm anxious. Like, trust me, I know I'm anxious. But why can't I shake this feeling? Right. Um, so, and then my fiance got me your book for um as a gift, and yeah, I started recovering from there. But ultimately, I didn't really get much help from the medical community. And I'm not saying that to besmirch them or anything. It's just that I don't know why, but it's not really discussed. It's not really researched. It's not really looked into. And it's a massive problem.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It is becoming more widely known, and I think that's a result of a lot of awareness in the community kind of propagating outwards. I talked to one of the leading researchers of DPDR in the United Kingdom.
Mm.
I spoke to him for an article I wrote years ago, and I asked him this. I was like, "How is it possible that this is as common as it is?" It's estimated that 1 in 50 people will develop depersonalization disorder at some point in their lives, and that's from the Guardian
Right.
newspaper about 10 years ago. So, and that's maybe even a conservative estimate.
Right.
It's so common. How is it possible that it's that common and the awareness of it isn't a fraction of
Yeah.
what it should be in the medical community?
Yeah.
He said there's a couple of reasons. He said the first one is that um, uh, as a condition, it's very difficult to describe. So
Yeah.
if you develop claustrophobia or agoraphobia, for example, because the symptoms are so environmentally specific, even if you've never heard of those terms,
Right.
simply the description of it will immediately be like, okay, well that's the diagnosis. But with DPDR, the symptoms can feel so strange to describe. I remember describing it in
Yeah.
terms of like I felt like time was fragmenting or my memory was fragmenting. Um, I
Yeah.
was I was also and he said this is the other thing is that a lot of people are afraid to describe it because they're afraid that they will be called quote unquote crazy and they'll just
Yep.
be thrown into a mental
Yep.
institute at the end of the day, which I also thought was going to happen to me when I described it
Yep.
to my GP back in 2005. And
Me too.
the other reason is that when people come in to a doctor's office and they're attempting to describe the feelings of DP and DR and often failing, but they are presenting with so many of the other symptoms of generalized anxiety, such
Right.
as weight loss, sleep loss. They, just a general disposition of anxiety. That the tendency is to simply prescribe or diagnose it as being anxiety or generalized anxiety.
Right.
And the most frustrating aspect of that is that that's not incorrect. It is anxiety.
Yeah.
So, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. So when the doctor says like, "Oh, that's anxiety," they're actually correct, but they're not. You leave the doctor's office without a fraction of the information that you need, and also
Yeah.
because our frame of reference for anxiety is like the anxiety that you feel before your driving test and then, but now what you're feeling is like, I feel like I have disconnected from reality. And the doctor
Yeah.
is saying, well, that's just anxiety. Then there's a part of you that's saying, like, that's not right. that
Yeah.
that he's got it wrong. Uh, I'm going crazy, and
Yep.
the clock is ticking until I just
Yep.
lose my mind completely.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's
Yep.
a lot of different factors at play. Fortunately, it's changing, but it
Yeah.
I would really hope that it happens faster than it has been.
Yeah. That's actually really funny that you say generalized anxiety disorder, because that's what I was diagnosed with
Right.
when I was younger, was generalized anxiety disorder, because they couldn't put a pin on it exactly what it was, I think, right? So they just said, well, you're having anxiety. This is GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, right? Um, it wasn't until I was older that I went through some actual intensive psychiatric testing and stuff like that, and found out that it really was obsessive compulsive disorder. It wasn't generalized anxiety, right? And ADHD as well, right? I have pretty bad ADHD. And I've got complex trauma, right? From adverse childhood events. So I think it's probably pretty common with people who have trauma to experience the depersonalization, right? Because for DP, for me, it almost felt like I was trying to escape reality, if that makes sense, right? Like it was, I don't think my brain wanted me to be grounded in here because of other things I might have been experiencing from my trauma, right? So I think my brain always wanted me to be in that kind of limbo, depersonalized state where I wasn't feeling anything, right? My emotions were blunted. Physically, like I would touch something and be like, I know I'm feeling it, like rationally, I know I'm feeling it, but I don't feel it, right? Um, and my surroundings feeling not real. I think my brain was really, really trying to keep me um in that uh kind of desensitized state, if that makes sense, right? Um, so yeah.
Um, and Travis, so you had this all through high school, and did you go to college after that? What was your, I mean, so, and also I wanted to ask you this at the start of the interview, but I forgot. So what's your profession? Are you working at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm do management in retail now.
Okay.
Um, outside of high school, after I graduated, I went to I did training at the Justice Institute of British Columbia, and I took a bunch of security courses. I took about like security related courses. I took a course called Therapeutic Crisis Intervention, which is essentially how to deal with and handle children who are traumatized in kind of an enforcement setting, right? So I actually worked at a youth custody center in British Columbia here, where we got children in that were, either a danger to themselves or others. And we had to essentially, we were like jail guards, right, at a youth custody center. So the therapeutic crisis intervention was, how to not re-traumatize these children who've been through all this crazy stuff. And, looking at it now, it's kind of ironic. Like, I feel like I was one of those kids, right? And then went on to kind of do that training and stuff like that. It just felt kind of I don't know, it was good insight, right? The training was really good insight on that kind of stuff. Um, but so then between security work and the jail work, I probably did about 8 years of that kind of security and enforcement work. It ended up becoming a little bit too much, and I think it was triggering some of that bullying that I went through, and some of those experiences with, you're dealing with very angry people all the time. And, you're dealing with situations that aren't great a lot of the time. And I think it was triggering some of that childhood stuff that I went through. So I ended up getting out of that. And now I manage a pet store, actually. So it's kind of, I'm one of the managers there. So it's kind of nice. to hang out with the animals and stuff like that.
It's really, really cool career path. Yeah, that's really that's amazing. I'd imagine as well that when you're working with those kids, that you were able to communicate with them from a fairly unique perspective in that, like, I think people can feel that, there's a lovely phrase that says, I'm equipped to help the person I used to be, and if you're dealing with a kid who's gone through some very, very difficult things, I think there's a path of communication that is opened, that is very particular to you, and that can't quite be replicated if somebody has not had that in their past.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it did feel like that. It did feel like that. Having a lot of empathy for these kids and their situations as well, right?
Yeah. What was your lowest point in the whole experience? Is there any particular time or event that sticks with you?
Yeah, so a few years ago, I was to the point where I was so agoraphobic, I felt like I couldn't leave my bedroom. Um, and it was probably, I think it was 2023, so a few years ago. It got so bad, I was locking myself in my bedroom pretty much, sitting there watching videos, watching TV, trying to do anything to distract myself because one thing I experienced with the depersonalization is a very loud mind, right? My mind was always racing with thoughts, ideas, like I couldn't get it to shut up, right? It was so loud. Um, and I had convinced myself that I was schizophrenic, and I had convinced myself that I had dementia, and I had convinced myself that of all these different things from the DP. I was just in such a low place, and I felt like absolute garbage. And I walked out into the living room and I looked at my fiance and I said, "Can you just take me to the hospital, please?" Because the depersonalization had been so chronic for so long, and it had gotten at its peak a few years ago. Um, and that I wasn't sleeping either, right? So I was locking myself in a bedroom, not getting much sunlight. I wasn't working at the time. I was sleeping 2 to 3 hours a day, maybe. Um, and it just all came to a head, and I felt like I was, going insane. I felt like I was also I felt like I was going psychotic because my mind was so loud and I was so panicky, and every little thing bothered me and every little thought scared the crap out of me. So she took me to the hospital, and I think the one thing I will say is that the doctor there did a really good job at identifying that I wasn't psychotic. Um, and that's I'm really thankful for that, because honestly, if the things I was saying to him probably, like, to me sounded crazy, right? Sounded insane. And if it was just a random bystander listening, they probably would have thought the same thing. But he, I think, recognized that I was just at a 10 out of 10 anxious for months, right? So he gave me some, sedatives and stuff like that, and I took them for about a week, and it got me back onto a sleep schedule, which helped a lot. Like, the sleep hygiene is also a big thing, right? But yeah, I think that was probably my lowest time. Was, locking myself in the bedroom, totally agoraphobic. Like, I couldn't even go outside because I would have a thought like, oh, what if that person's watching you? Or what if this person wants to kill you? Or what if the sky is going to open up and this happens? Or what if, gravity shuts off and you go flying out? Like, it didn't matter what the thought was. I just, it was a constant racing mind all the time that wouldn't stop, and just constant intrusive thoughts that, that made me agoraphobic. And yeah, that was probably my worst time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. That's I'm sorry I had to go through that. Um, Loud mind is a really, really good way of describing it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just I remember talking about this on a recent interview, but I remember getting to a point where I felt like I just wanted it to stop. And it wasn't that I wanted to end my life,
Right.
but I just wanted quiet. I just wanted, and
Yeah.
nothing was stopping it. Nothing could. And then even in my dreams, I would have nightmares in which I was having this. So then it was like
Right.
literally 24/7. And it's just like your brain is just like shouting at you all the time, and it's relentless. I think it feeds
Yep.
back as well, Travis, into something you were saying earlier about, you said my memory was trash, and it's something people describe all the time, and I did too. I was like, I mean, at one point I thought I had dementia. Like I was 25 years old. It was like, oh, it's dementia,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Yep.
And but what's interesting is that, I mean, when you look back at this, when I looked back on my experience from a non-anxious perspective, and I was like, well, so my mind is racing all the time, and it feels literally loud. And like, of course, then if I try to think to myself, okay, but like, what did I have for lunch today? You know, and if I immediately can't recall that information, then my assumption is I'm losing my memory
Yep.
in the midst of going crazy anyway. So
Yep.
I'm completely ruined.
Yeah.
And yeah, uh, and it just turns into this kind of loop of catastrophic interpretations. But then, yeah, and then also the assumption that, well, this must be psychosis.
Mhm.
Uh, and again, the absolute certainty of that, I was certain I was having
Yep.
a psychotic break. I was developing
Yep.
schizophrenia. And also, at the same time, I was going to all these different like specialists and doctors, and not one of them ever said that sounds like psychosis. And
Yeah.
these are people who are trained to
Yep.
look out for the symptoms of these conditions. Not one of them ever said it. Even when I asked them, "Does this sound like this?" No, they were all like, "No."
Yeah.
They were like, "Sean, it's
Mhm.
anxiety." So when I looked back on it, I never had any actual evidence that like I was actually losing my memory or that I was
Yep.
actually developing psychosis. But what you learn in recovery is that anxiety doesn't give a damn about evidence. It doesn't
The
care.
Mhm.
As we were saying earlier, bring logic and reason and evidence to the table with anxiety, waste of time. Because
Yep.
anxiety disregards all of that and says, yeah, but you got dementia and you got psychosis,
Yeah.
and yours is different, and you'll never recover.
Yep. Yeah,
Uh,
that yours is different thing is huge, man. Every single person that has struggled with DP is gonna have that thought. I swear. This is different. This is different. This isn't actually depersonalization. This is schizophrenia. This is dementia. This is MS. Whatever you want to, whatever label, whatever association that is given to it, right? Yeah, it's it's absolutely terrifying, man. But I'm on the other end of it now, and I've just kind of learned to agree with my mind, right? Whatever it throws at me, give me whatever you want. I'll agree with it because at the end of the day, fighting it just makes it way worse, right? So, yeah, practicing tolerating that loud mind feeling too that I was having, right? Like just sitting with it, right? Turn all the fans off, turn off the TV, and just let my mind be loud. Kind of like a little bit kind of like ERP with obsessive compulsive disorder, right? Exposing yourself to it, right? Yeah, you have to follow the steps in your book and you have to, do your best to follow those things. But at the same time, too, it's learning to tolerate the feeling, right? Learning to get comfortable with having depersonalization. Um, because, you don't have to like it. but you have to do your best to tolerate it, right? Because that's the only way you're going to get through.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that when we think of it, when we think of loud as the loud mind as something that we need to push back on
Mm.
and attack, or we think of anxiety as something that we need to defeat, it's already being incorrectly categorized
Yeah.
because again, if you're experiencing like sweating as a result of anxiety, you wouldn't say I have to defeat my armpits. You know, you're already you're just
Yeah.
into it's just an incorrect. It's just looking at it through the wrong lens.
Mm.
And when you get to a point where, as you say, like you start to tolerate it, and you become indifferent to it,
Yeah.
and you just say like because the mistake that we make, and I made for a long time, was I would say to myself, for example, okay, well, I can't go to the cinema until the anxiety and DP are completely gone. When
Right.
they're completely gone, then I'll be ready to go to the cinema.
Yeah.
Uh, Big mistake, because
Yeah.
you'll never get there, because now you're monitoring what one is dependent upon the other. Whereas what we do instead is we say, well, I'm going to the movies, like I'm going. If anxiety wants to be there, it can be there.
Yeah.
If anxiety wants to throw a hissy fit, and then fine, grand, I'm going to the movie.
Yeah.
And also anxiety. I'm not going to live in a world where anxiety gets to decide for me whether I go to see a Marvel movie. Uh, like
Yep.
absolutely not. And I don't care if that feels frightening to do. I don't care if I don't care if I literally have a panic attack at the cinema. If I have a panic attack at the cinema,
Mhm.
I'll go to the bathroom, I'll take a break, splash some water on my face, and I go back and watch the rest of the movie. But I am not living my life trying to pussyfoot around this anymore. I'm not doing it. And you just become indifferent to it. But anxiety having a vote or a voice, no, no.
Yeah, you can't let it. And I'm doing peer support course right now so that I can try to help other people with anxiety and trauma and stuff like that. And so I'm doing a peer support course in my province in Canada here. And recently, yesterday, I actually drove 2.5 hours out of town, even though I still deal with the agoraphobia a little bit here and there. So when I feel it prop up or come up, I'm like, nope, let's go do something, right? Like, let's go do something. And yeah, I made a video about it and everything too, and um, I took a video of us going around this historical site, and the drive out was really hard. Like I was definitely panicking a little bit, but like you said, you can't let anxiety have the voice, right? You have to do what you want to do, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So with that in mind, Travis, can you tell us a bit more about how your recovery from DPDR started?
Yeah.
And what did it feel like?
Yeah. So it started with, I mean, the catalyst that made the most change was definitely reading your book. Um, and reading and understanding the principles within that book. Um, and the main changes that I made were, like we talked about, the feeling of indifference to depersonalization, right? And just moving on and going out and getting on with your day. Reducing my caffeine intake helped a lot, right? Um, Trying to get better sleep helped a lot, right? All those things are kind of supportive for me, right? The caffeine intake, the nicotine intake, the sleep are all supportive for me. It was the shift in mindset that was the most helpful, right? So understanding, with the, like I said before, the psychoeducation that you gave on depersonalization in your book, um, really helped me realize that it wasn't a threat, right? Depersonalization isn't a threat. This is something that happens because I'm anxious, right? I'm very anxious right now. My body's going to react, like you said, with sweating or increased heart rate or loud mind. and the depersonalization's there, and it's going to go away once I reduce that anxiety or I gain that indifference to it. Um, so I think that's what helped me the most was that mindset shift. Um, from oh my god, this is the worst thing ever and it's going to kill me, to no, you just need to learn to live with it and move forward. Not learn to live with it, that's not the right word, but just, gain indifference to the feeling and living your life. How it feels now, like I still have little blips of it pop up, and I'm able to just go, okay, that's depersonalization, and move forward and not panic about it anymore, right? Because before I would have a thought or I'd have a weird feeling or whatever, and I would just start panicking, and then it would loop from there, right? And I'd be stuck for months in depersonalization. Now I have a feeling, and I might have that initial like oh feeling or uh-oh feeling, and then I let it go. You just learn to let it go, right? And I I don't know how to explain it. It's just I don't get hooked anymore.
Once you recover, it's understanding that, like, that doesn't mean you're never going to ever feel stress again,
Yeah, yeah,
or that you're never going to have moments where anxiety spikes up. Everybody does. Like, everybody does. And it's unfair to expect that, like, oh, like, I'll recover, but I'll never feel stress again. It's like, the example I always like to give is like, take somebody who experiences heart palpitations and they think they're having a heart attack.
yeah.
And they go to and they, call an ambulance, they go to the hospital, they think, this is it, I'm finished, I'm dead, it's over. And then the doctor explains to them, no, no, it's heart palpitations because you had 4 cups of coffee this morning, didn't sleep, you're stressed out at work, you're absolutely fine, this is perfectly normal. So once they understand that and they have that information and it's there forever, that your heart beating a bit quickly does not mean you're having a heart attack and you're going to die. Okay, great. So that prevents that catastrophic loop from happening again, because you can intervene with that knowledge. You just say, no, I know what this is.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you'll never have heart palpitations again? Like, of course you will. Like, of course you will. You're a human being. You'll get stressed out from time to time.
Mhm.
You'll have moments of anxiety. But the beauty of coming through any anxiety-based condition is that you now have that intimate familiarity with anxiety, and you recognize it. And in recognizing it for what it is, you prevent it from ever becoming an ongoing issue again, because you're
Yeah,
preventing that feedback loop from spinning off again. Because the
totally.
only reason that feedback loop spun off in the first place was because of a lack of understanding of what
Right.
it is. Um, you know, it's someone, I did a recovery interview with a nurse actually, and he said like, to experience feelings of DPDR from time to time is part of being human. Like, it's normal to feel stressed and anxiety from time to time. It's normal, and this is what happens when you're a human being out in the world.
And I don't know about you, but I'm a very creative person, right? I have a very intense imagination. So my brain can conjure up pretty much anything I want, whether it's in my control or not, right? But the difference is that I'm going to be living my life and enjoying the things that are in my life, and not stuck in a bedroom asking my fiance to take me to the hospital. So if being recovered means experiencing a little bit of this or a little bit of that, um, here and there, but still enjoying my life and having a connection to those I love, I'll take it. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And Travis, how was the DP manual helpful in your recovery?
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, the education piece of it, right? You speaking about how the anxiety is linked to the depersonalization, um, and how we need to learn to, um, like you said, gain irrelevance was really big, right? So when before I read the book, I just thought depersonalization was a thing on its own, right? I thought it was separate from anxiety, right? I thought it was a completely different condition. So I was stuck here trying to fight the depersonalization and not address the anxiety at all, right? So once I started addressing the anxiety, um, then I was able to kind of get out of that feedback loop, right? The other things that were really big for me were the hygiene pieces as well, right? So, the getting more sleep, getting better quality sleep, reducing my caffeine intake because there was days I was drinking, like I'd have like energy drinks or like a bunch of coffee um, or just smoking all day, right? Constantly staying buzzed on nicotine and the hygiene pieces were really helpful as well, right? So I cut my caffeine intake down probably 80-90%. And I've cut my nicotine intake down probably 80-90% as well. So I have a really bad uh, outside of depersonalization. I don't have a great memory when it comes to reading because of my ADHD. So it's hard to really recall specific stuff within the book. But the education piece of it was the biggest thing for me, honestly. It allowed me to shift my mindset, to have a different perspective on depersonalization.
Mm. That's great. I'm so happy that it was helpful. And yeah, it's interesting. When you're talking about the idea that depersonalization is separate from anxiety, and that's an assumption that I worked under for a long time as well. Was that like, well, this is a completely separate thing. And even the term depersonalization disorder sounds
Right.
like it's a separate disorder, and it sounds quite scary. So that has to be different from anxiety. And it's good to remember that the word disorder is simply a categorization. And the example I like to give is like, take somebody who has like 3 panic attacks over the course of a month.
Right.
They're having panic attacks. But if somebody has 30 panic attacks over the course of a month, that's categorized as panic disorder.
Right. Yep.
And not maybe not incorrectly, but at no point is it anything else other than panic attacks. It's still just
Right.
panic attacks. The word disorder just implies that it is happening more frequently than it
Right.
should do. Um, it sounds like such a scary thing when you read it first, but it is just a categorization. It just means it's happening when it doesn't need to be happening, but it still is an anxiety based condition, and as such is treatable, and you can always recover from it. Um,
Yeah.
so now that you have recovered, Travis, a question that people always ask me is: getting back to normal really getting back to normal?
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, I've had it for so long. I I I f- I feel like I might have forgotten what normal was at the time, right? Like when I first recovered, it was a weird feeling to me to not be depersonalized. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying my life now, right? So yeah, I do feel normal now, right? I feel connected to my friends and family. I, my memory has gotten a lot better. And yeah, everything feels pretty fine and dandy.
Fine and dandy is a great
Fine and
way to
dandy.
describe it. Fine and dandy, man. Oh, listen, yeah, it's yeah, that thing as well of when you've had it for so long. And I was the same. I mean, I had it for 2 years, so it was a lot less time than yourself, Travis. But I remember at the time, when I was coming out of it,
Mm.
one of my big worries was that like I wouldn't be able to remember what normal felt like. So you're
Yeah.
like, how can I possibly recover if I can't remember what being normal felt like? So if I'm looking at photos of myself from 5 years ago when I was traveling and playing music and stuff like, and I don't recognize that person and I don't remember what any of that felt like, how can I get back there if I can't even aim for it in my head?
Yeah.
And again, that seems like it makes so much sense, especially
Yep.
when you're in it. You're like, God damn, like that makes a lot of sense. And then,
Hmm.
but the thing is that that's not your job when you're recovering.
Yep.
Again, the example I always like to give is like, look, these are symptoms of anxiety, in the same way that like sneezing and itchy eyes are a symptom of hay fever.
Right.
If you have hay fever, you don't need to remember what not having hay fever was like to get out of hay
Right.
fever. If you're having a panic attack, but just what probably a closer example to DPDR because it's fundamentally anxiety. But if you're having a panic attack, do you need to consciously remember what not having a panic attack felt like in order to exit from the panic attack?
That's right. That's right.
Right? You, that's a massive overcomplication because ultimately all that's happening is your anxiety levels go up and they come back down. And
Yep.
everything else is setting up these kind of like tripwires for ourselves. Like, okay, but what if I need to remember what getting back? No, 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 no,
Yep.
no, 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 no. You're overcomplicating it. If I
Yep.
could go back and have a conversation with myself back in 2005, 2007, I would sit myself down and say, Sean, you're overcomplicating all this.
Yeah.
Like it seems, it feels like it's the most massive, catastrophic, terrifying thing that any human being has ever gone through. This is
Yep.
it, but in actuality, it is the simplest possible thing. And all of this stuff that you've built on top of it is narrative scaffolding that you've put on it
Yeah.
because that's what it feels like. It feels like
Yeah.
it feels like it's worthy of a storyline and it's worthy of, this is to do with psychosis, it's to do with enlightenment, it's to do with like you've damaged your
Mm.
brain. And then you just
Yep.
take all that off and say, it is actually just anxiety.
Yeah.
And it
I think,
feels, go ahead.
yeah, sorry. I think to go back on the question you asked me about feeling normal, I think if I'm sitting there questioning whether or not I feel normal, I'm still in depersonalization.
Right.
Like,
Right.
right? You know you'll know that you're feeling normal if you're not questioning it and you're just going forward, right? So
Exactly. And the thing is that when we're in it, we feel driven to answer that question because we're like,
totally.
okay, but how do I feel? Okay, am I feeling normal? Okay, I'm
Yeah.
not feeling normal. Okay, what can I do now to feel normal?
Hmm.
How will I recognize if normality presents itself? What if I can't remember what normal felt like? So, and off we go in this big jolly
Hmm.
down this lane that doesn't go anywhere.
Yep.
And in actuality, what normality feels like, I get a non-anxious perspective, is you're just there. You're just in the flow
Yep.
state of having the conversation or making the coffee or reading the book or listening to the podcast or whatever.
Yep.
But what you're not doing is asking yourself the question. There's a whole
Totally.
section in on the website called like the questions are the condition. Uh,
Mm.
the questions seem like they make sense. They seem like they are making a good case of a question that desperately needs to be answered. And again, they're just not based on anything. As someone said to me once, it's anxiety putting on different T-shirts to try and get your
Mm.
attention
Totally.
to just get you back into the tug of war with it.
Hmm.
Um, and and they seem like they make sense.
Yeah.
I see that there's like when anxiety says, yeah, but like, come here, what if yours is different though? What if yours actually is a bit different because
Hmm.
you're how it happened to you is a bit different. And also, I haven't seen someone describe this exact set of symptoms at this
Yep.
exact time. And you go to yourself, actually, that's actually not a bad point. And now you're back into
Yep.
presenting a case to anxiety. And I did this so many, even when I was making progress,
Yeah.
I would just find myself getting back into this judge and jury thing with anxiety and presenting with the best of intentions and then wondering why I was trying to go to sleep that night and I was
Yeah.
thinking about anxiety and DP.
Yeah.
It's been so lovely to speak with you today. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to share your story with me and with the channel. I know there's going to be people watching this who will find your story extremely helpful and inspirational, especially people who've gone through maybe something very similar to what you went through in your childhood and your teenage years.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sean. And to all of those out there that are going through it, it will get better. Just keep pushing.
100%. Thanks so much, Travis. Stay in touch and appreciate the time. Take care, buddy.
Bye. Thanks, Sean.
Bye bye. Bye bye.